Mr. President, I wanted to take a few minutes to speak about what needs to be done before we leave town, before we shut down this session of the Congress. In my view, Congress needs to do 5 things before the end of the year to head off difficulties for our economy. First, the House, as many have said, the House needs to take up and pass the middle-class tax cut bill that was already passed here in the Senate. That's the first item. That's been given a lot of attention. Second, we need to, houses of Congress need to head off most, if not all, of the scheduled sequester. And I hope we're able to do that. Third, Congress should pass the tax extenders bill that was reported out of the Senate Finance Committee this summer, and that's going to be the subject of most of my comments here this morning. Fourth, the Congress should repeal the SGR. This is the law that governs the rates of reimbursement to providers under the Medicare program. Unless we repeal that law, we will have to once again patch the law, as we have done for many years now, with a so-called Medicare doc fix. And I think the time has come to go ahead and repeal the law. The fifth item I wanted to just mention is that Congress needs to give the President the power to raise the debt ceiling. At the same time, Congress should retain Congress's right to disapprove of that increase, but Secretary Geithner has made a proposal to the Congress, which I believe makes good sense. It is based upon the arrangement that was agreed to that Senator McConnell had put forward in the 2011 debt ceiling crisis that we all lived through. Obviously, this is a significant to-do list, and I don't intend to speak about all these items. I would like to focus my remarks on the need for Congress to pass the extenders package of tax provisions. I feel this has gotten too little attention. It deserves to be dealt with as a major component of the reaction or the response to the so-called fiscal cliff. This is, in fact, the Family and Business Tax Cuts Certainty Act of 2012. While I hope that the negotiations to avert the fiscal cliff are successful, in my view, we should not wait for a grand bargain in order to finish work on this important tax extender legislation. Tax extenders are different from the other fiscal cliff issues for 3 basic reasons, and let me describe those reasons. First, tax extenders are much less contentious than the other end-of-year problems that need to be resolved. The tax extender bill on the Senate calendar has strong bipartisan support. In August, the Finance Committee approved it by a large margin. We had support from 6 Republicans, including the ranking member, Senator Hatch. All 13 Democrats supported it. I believe that many more Republicans will vote for this legislation if it's brought up for consideration here in the Senate. The bill consists entirely of tax cuts. It should not be difficult to get senators to vote for tax cuts, right before Christmas especially. Most of these tax cuts have solid bipartisan support. Many of these tax cuts will help the economy, will help the middle class. For example, the bill includes the deduction for tuition expenses, which is a $4.2 billion tax cut for college students and their families. It includes the deduction for state and local sales taxes. This is a $4.4 billion tax cut, mainly for people who live in states that do not have an income tax. States such as Alaska and Florida and Nevada and Tennessee and Texas and South Dakota and Washington and Wyoming. It includes an increase in the Section 179 expensing limits. This is a $2.4 billion tax cut for small businesses. And it includes an extension of the production tax credit for wind energy. This is a tax credit that has bipartisan support. It has helped to create thousands of jobs. The production tax credit for wind energy is a vital component of our nation's energy policy. It's an Its extension is crucial to taking advantage of our domestic energy resources and fostering a vibrant and globally competitive industry. In just the several short years that the wind industry has enjoyed this production tax credit, wind installations have grown immensely. Manufacturing facilities have grown to where today we have over 400 of these manufacturing facilities that have sprung up around the country. The United States now has over 50,000 megawatts of wind capacity and the wind resources to grow that industry substantially more. The production tax credit for wind is set to expire in 3 weeks, as these other provisions are as well. With it, tens of thousands of jobs will be lost. In fact, most wind-related companies have already begun to lay off employees. Orders for new turbines and gearboxes have fallen off significantly. New wind installations are expected to decline dramatically in 2013 unless Congress takes action. Uncertainty comes from many places. For those who are in the business world, Congress should not continue to add to that uncertainty. Instead, we should extend the production tax credit for wind and extend the other existing expiring provisions passed by the Senate Finance Committee on a bipartisan basis. A second reason that the tax extenders are different from other issues related to the fiscal cliff is that we have a tax extenders bill that's already been voted on in committee. By contrast, none of us know how the disagreements about the Bush tax cuts or sequestration will be resolved. Those negotiations are yet to conclude, but the tax extenders bill has already been negotiated in the Finance Committee. The committee agreed to omit provisions costing billions of dollars. It modified other provisions to make them work better or to scale back on them. The Finance Committee approved this bill by a vote of 19 to 5. Some senators believe tax extenders should only be approved as part of a plan to do comprehensive tax reform. I would agree that each tax extender and each tax expenditure should be examined again during comprehensive tax reform. Each should be made permanent or phased out based on that review, but realistically, the Congress will not make those decisions before the end of this year. Tax reform will take the better part of a year to accomplish, or perhaps even longer. We will need to pass an extenders bill before then, and we have one before us today that is worthy of being passed. The third reason we should pass the tax extenders package now and not wait until the 11th hour is that waiting could force the IRS to delay the tax filing season by 10 weeks or more for millions of Americans. In fact, we are at the 11th hour. I should amend my comments to make that point very clear. This need for the IRS to delay the tax filing season is because the bill extends many provisions that expired at the end of 2011. They need to be extended for 2012 before people file their tax returns beginning in January of 2013. After Congress acts, if it acts, the IRS needs weeks to finalize tax forms and instruction books and to program computers to process the returns. The IRS tells us that the alternative minimum tax, which is part of this tax extender package, would cause the biggest delay in the filing of new returns because of the number of tax credits and deductions that interact with the alternative minimum tax. In 2010, when Congress waited until December to patch the alternative minimum tax, 10 million taxpayers had to delay their filings the next year. In 2007, after another 11th hour patch, 13 million taxpayers were delayed. Both the patches in 2007 and 2010 were enacted in December, so if we don't patch the AMT, or alternative minimum tax, until January, the consequences will be even more severe. Mr. President, I believe my time has expired. I have a few more comments, but I will put those in the record and urge my colleagues to take up and pass this important legislation, send it to the House so they can do the same and send it to the President. I ask that my full statement be included in the record as if read.